Let's begin our practice by inviting a chime to sing. Are you ready, Lo? Welcome, everyone. This is SatiSeva, and SatiSeva is an affinity group associated with Recovery Dharma. This is a collection of 16 mindfulness practices inspired by the work of Thich Nhat Hanh and the Order of Interbeing. These 16 mindfulness practices have been rewritten, and they are all about reimagining the journey of recovery and what it means to be a support to someone on that journey. And that means all of us, because all of us are here supporting one another, and all of us are here supporting ourselves on this highly personal, deeply complex experience we call shifting our relationship to negative habit energy. I'd like to share with you a sentiment of metta, loving kindness, as a way of framing your practice today. I paint these little pages and then I cut them up into little rectangles and then I write sentiments of loving kindness on the back. This one reads, "May I know there is always room for me in the spaciousness of wisdom. May I know there is always room for me in the spaciousness of wisdom." Friends, I'm going to just close my eyes for a minute and invite us collectively to arrive to this time of reflection. And soon we're going to open up this space for sharing so that we can be present to one another, hear one another's perspectives. But for now, I want to step into the spaciousness of wisdom and to acknowledge that there is room for me. There's room for you too. So I'd like to just encourage that sentiment to become personal. Make it personal. Make it first person. There's room for me in the spaciousness of wisdom. And as I'm sitting here contemplating that very briefly, like what motivated me to write that? What's coming alive for me in this present moment is the reality of how often I witness people who are so ravaged by negative habit energy that the perception is being outside of wisdom, being outside of compassion, being outside of goodness. And part of that is true, actually. Some of the actions, the unskillful actions that happen when one is in active addiction is isolation. And what we're isolating from are avenues and spaces of compassion and understanding, avenues of wisdom and trust. And so we do feel outside of those illuminating, healing places. And it's not the whole truth. The whole truth is the limitless nature of, of these virtues. Loving kindness is limitless, which means even when I feel outside of it, even when I feel like I don't belong in spaces of loving kindness is surrounding me, regardless of my perception. When I have put myself in places where I've abandoned receiving compassion and understanding, it's still there, waiting for me, irrepressibly present. Even when I have been in deep states of confusion, anxiety, worry, what ifing, doubting, and so on, wisdom is always surrounding me, swirling around. And every once in a while, I catch a whiff of it and I can tap back into it. Why this is relevant to our conversation today and our exploration of openness today is because in a fixed mind, I can't see this. When I'm stuck in a place of confusion and anxiety and insecurity, it's so easy for me to clamp down my mind tighter and tighter, narrower and narrower, and forget I am part of a living, breathing, ever evolving, timeless cosmos. These qualities are always available to me. They're available to me externally to me, and they are available internally. They are within me, but I can't find them when I'm not open. Today, I'd like to read just a couple of paragraphs from Chapter 2, which is the mindfulness practice of openness. And we're going to read from the subsection called Duality and Non-Duality. Nope, it's just called Non-Duality. And in the SatiSeva book, the concept of duality and non-duality comes up all the time. And the reason is because the Western mind is highly conditioned to dualistic thinking. Something is either this or it's that. Something is either good or it's bad. It's right or it's wrong. I'm abstaining from all substances and that's bad. That's bad. That's good. Or I'm using and that's bad. I'm either sober and clear-headed good, or I'm confused and maladaptive bad. And we suffer in that limited space. We volley from one side to the other. It's the state of constant tug of war and inner conflict. And this is because in the Western mind, we haven't been trained with these Eastern perspectives that says, hey, this is true. When I'm abstinent, there's clarity there, and that is great. And when I'm in the middle of active use, there's a whole bunch of confusion, and that's not so great. That's bad sometimes. The Eastern philosophy says, and what else is there? Those two dualistic extremes are true. And what else is true? What's in the middle? What's in between those things? And that's the non-dual space. It's both those extremes and so much more. The instrument of peace that we use all the time, particularly in this chapter, is that's true and not the whole truth. Over and over and over again, I have to remind myself, I have to use that instrument because it's so easy for me to get locked into one extreme or the other. And forget, there's a whole gray zone going on. So, without further ado, let's hear about non-duality. I understand what motivates dualistic either-or thinking within me. I like things simple, straightforward, cut and dry. Either something is good or bad, right or wrong. Dualistic either-or thinking seems an easier way to perceive the world. However, the nature of reality is complex, and we must develop more nuanced vision to see its fullness. It helps to identify specific habits or ways of perceiving and slowly deconstruct them into their dualistic and non-dualistic form. For example, let's explore the predictable ways we engage a loved one. Initially, you may sense a little stirring, like I'm pointing a finger at you, the support person, rather than the one who is causing all the problems. Remember, dualistic either-or thinking has us believing either they're the problem or I am. Non-dualistic both and perspective says, wait a second, we both have problems and we are individually responsible for them. Our loved ones use substances unwisely, become intoxicated and unskillful in their speech. The typical predictable reaction is to engage with them as if they were capable of having a rational, courteous conversation. We may not even be fully aware of our own anger or frustration spilling into the conversation, or if we do, we may feel so justified that we don't care. So when our loved one reacts to our reactivity with more unskillfulness, the patterns of troubled communication and relating repeat again and again. This repetitive dynamic is part of the cyclical nature of addiction, and we must identify and admit the ways in which we might be contributing to creating the conditions for this repetition. With just a little curiosity, we might start to see how often we repeat the same actions while expecting, hoping, or wanting a different outcome. Having some awareness and openness allows the crafting of a new response. Maybe it is simply taking deep breaths and pausing to slow down. Maybe it is practicing noble silence, or perhaps it means establishing a more solid boundary. For example, we have discussed that when you drink and become intoxicated and incoherent, I will not engage. If you try to engage me, you can expect that I will ignore you or leave the room. The point is to remember that we have agency. We can take responsibility for our actions, thoughts, and responses, irrespective of someone else's behavior or capacity to interact. Practicing openness is what empowers us to engage in this way. So, friends, that particular section is taking the stance of you as the support person. Maybe you're a sponsor or a friend. Or maybe you're just interacting with somebody who isn't particularly skillful in their communication. It has nothing to do with substances at all. The point is, what is my own negative habit reactivity to this individual or to this particular kind of behavior or style of communication? Can I even be open to the possibility that I have negative habit energy in my reactions? Can I look at that? Because when we're in relationship with somebody, whether we're friends, whether we're lovers, have some kind of intimate relationship, or we're acquaintances, there's a mutuality there. One person has responsibility for actions. I have responsibility for my actions. And together, there is the action of us. But if I don't take care of my stuff and this other person doesn't take care of their stuff, The relationship that is us is going to be frayed. So to be open is to see and to determine this is mine. This is my stuff to look at. This is your stuff to look at. And together may we come together with some kind of understanding. And for the next few moments of silence, the invitation to contemplate is, where in your mind are you most fixed? And by that I mean, where in your mind do you trip over dualism? Something is either this or it's that. It's got to be right or wrong, good or bad. And before we really enjoy some silence, I just want to share with you very briefly something that I didn't realize I was going to face by becoming a beekeeper. And that is a real tangible sense of the fragility of life and death and our attitudes about life and death. So yesterday I installed in 2 hives 20,000 bees. And many of the beekeepers that I've been interacting with very briefly, the general attitude about the bees is you're going to lose some. They're going to die, and they're just bees. So you got to expect that. And kind of the shoulder shrugging, they're just bees. I even had an instructor in the beekeeping class I took try to suggest that bees aren't really don't really have a consciousness. They're just bees. I am vehemently opposed to this idea, by the way. Bees are incredible creatures in terms of what they can do, and we depend on them for our food. So they deserve enormous amounts of respect. And yesterday I killed 2 bees. I squished them, just, you know, shaking, moving the packaging boxes and stuff. And I was pretty devastated about it. And then this morning there were about 30 bees that didn't make it into the hive. They were still stuck in the packaging box. They just got too cold as the sun went down and they couldn't make it in there. And I was thinking, did I give them traumatic brain injuries, head injuries when I was shaking them into the hive? I mean, I was just devastated. Like, oh my God, look at all these little dead beings. And they were just hatched out a little while ago. They have a very short life anyway. And oh, and I can totally see, and I could easily pick up the rationale mind that says, well, they're just bees and there were 20,000 of them. What are you going to do, Julia? And shrug my shoulders and just take on a little bit of ambivalence. But I chose not to do that today, this morning, as I began my day. Instead, I chose to look at, well, wait a minute. All life matters. All life is connected. I certainly wouldn't want anyone to have that attitude about me. I'm just an older woman. How do I matter? I don't matter. Yikes. And there's a violence in that attitude that actually persists in all manner of ways. So either something matters or it doesn't matter. Who decides that? How is that decided? And so I feel on a very personal level that I'm standing before that dualism, and I'm standing right in the middle of those conflicting opposites going, wait a second, everything is connected. Everything matters. And how do I reconcile that by virtue of tending to these bees, I am going to accidentally, carelessly take these lives? So it was a lot. It was a lot to hold. This morning, I chose to take out those 30 or so bees and I filmed them. I put them on the earth and then I buried them. Or I actually didn't bury them, I covered them and I put my hand on them with a blessing. Such a little thing to do. And yet it was an enactment that reminded me that everything is sacred. And it really was an awareness for me to definitely be even slower and more careful as I work these hives and learn about these hives. So that's some duality that's coming alive for me. Life matters, life doesn't matter. What's in between? As you settle into this silence, pay particular attention to any feelings, any emotions that might be arising. And rather than judge them good or bad, again, that's dual, just let them rise, let them be, whatever the emotion is. With your breath, breathe it in fully, be with it. And then on the exhalation, see if you can provide a little bit of openness to let it ease. If you have a particularly tight thought of dualism that you're working with, that's okay. Breathe in that thought, be with that thought. And then on the exhalation, just see if you can bring forward some intentional ease to that tightness, some opening to any tightness. Usually, when I'm stuck on a thought, I'm usually judging someone. Yeah, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have said that. That was a barnyard thing to say. I can't believe they did that. That happens. And so then I just breathe that in. Wow, look at that. There's that judgment. Okay. Whew. People say and do things that I don't agree with all the time. Breathing in. Yikes, I say and do things that people don't agree with all the time. Breathing out some ease for all of it. Use your breath. Use what's coming alive in this moment. Be with it and enjoy this time of gentle, friendly, curious reflection. Enjoy your practice, friends. friends. Part of the practice of exploring duality and non-duality is to recognize that I've set up a dichotomy. So it's easy to treat duality as the bad thing and non-duality as the good thing. We're so conditioned for it. And so this is a real cautionary note. This is a real invitation to just look gently at this propensity that is so very human to see things in either or terms and to not judge it, or if you are judging it critically, just take a moment to pause and go, okay, wait a second. What else is here? Because this could very well be true. Something is either this or it's that. And what else is here? That's the key to a non-dualistic practice, is to just have enough spaciousness, enough openness to be curious, to recognize that there's almost always more to the story. There's almost always more to see, more to explore. The nature of reality is an infinite expression, limitless. So there's always more. We simply need to cultivate the conditions for this open, curious awareness. So let's just take a moment to come into the breath and breathe in a little breathing mantra. These breathing mantras are throughout the book, and I just kind of make them up on the spot, just whatever comes alive for me. Thich Nhat Hanh was famous for this. He would sit quietly and breathe in whatever was coming alive and then breathe out some kind of antidote, some kind of ease. So if I'm breathing in anger or frustration, tightness, I can breathe out ease and clarity and calm and cool. Today, I just like to breathe in some openness and breathe out comfort in this expansive view. Breathing in this conditioned mind I have to see things as either this or that. And breathe out just a dab of curiosity. What else is here? I'd like to breathe in a smile. And I'd like to breathe out joy in the effort. Breathing in, breathing out. Okie doke. The recording back on so we can integrate these practices. And what I mean by integration is I sometimes pull from things that was shared in community as a way of kind of summing up the practice. And I think I'd like to begin by recognizing that we talked about openness, we talked about duality and non-duality, and I think everybody here can relate to how human this experience is. And I want to emphasize that one of the things that the Buddhist practice does so well is recognizing even our relationship to habit energy is very black and white, good or bad, dualistic. And if we can just stretch it out a little bit, we actually bring ease, which is fascinating because there's curiosity there, there's a little bit of wonder there. And anytime you bring in qualities of curiosity and wonder, there's a levity, a lightness that immediately is infused into the situation. And whenever a person feels a little bit lighter, there's a brightness, there's a clarity that comes. And this is why these practices are so relevant and so healing. I'd like to mention that in the SatiSeva book, chapter 6, which is the power of pause, the mindfulness practice of pause, there's a whole section on our nervous system and defining the two predominant aspects of a human nervous system. So there's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And today we were hearing about the fight and flight response. There's also a freeze response, which we heard. And then there's the whole fawning response, the people pleasing, all of those things in relationship to experiencing alarming situations, reactive situations, and then the exhaustion that comes. Now, the thing that I want to say about it and I want to emphasize is that this is your nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do and what it's been designed to do since time immemorial. It's about safety. It's about survival. It's about learning to hunker down. All of these things from your ancestors from way, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago are coded in your DNA. It's very, very, very important to have these responses. However, what we're realizing, and really the power of the Buddhist practice, and the thing that just humbles me is to realize how ancient these practices are and how the Buddha was really keen on exploring his own experience, his own alarms and bells and whistles in his body, and understanding them well enough on how he could himself become less reactive, less violent, less aggressive, and producing less harm in the world. That's amazing. And so here we are exploring that as well. And so when these arisings happen within us, please keep in mind that there's nothing you can do about preventing them from arising. So it's not like you're like, oh, just gotta tap that shit down. No. The invitation is to really let it arise fully and know that you have something called a parasympathetic nervous system, which is all about your body's and your mind and your spirit's capacity to rest and restore. So, what are the most promising avenues of rest and restoration? Once again, the Buddha knew this 2,500 years ago. Number one access point, the breath. And it doesn't take much. Just take a single breath, but you have to take it with awareness. So when you're in that reactive state, like you feel it. Yesterday, I was literally buzzing like my bees without even having them because I was like, oh no, what have? And I just had to go, Julia. And I had to do it multiple times throughout my day. And there's so many ways to play with this. So I was telling Lo that on two of the boxes of all of these bees, there were all these loose bees because there's bees everywhere, right? And I'm like, oh God, do I want all these loose bees in my car? So I I'm like, I was coaxing them off, but I didn't have my gloves. It was just my bare hands and everything. And then I was like, ugh, I don't want to get stung because then I'll kill a bee. That'd be terrible. So I found a dandelion, like a little puff, and I was just gently on the dandelion puff, moving these bees off my packages. And I thought I was in the clear. I was so proud of myself. And I put them in the car and I drove off. And then in the back of my car, just scurrying along the back window, I saw about a dozen bees. And I'm like, how the heck did you get in here? But in any case, all of that activity calmed me right down. Who knew that picking up a dandelion and gently brushing a bee would be to my body? I did because it was intentional. So I was aware of what I was doing. I made this intentional decision and I did it and I knew it would calm me down. It was me tapping into my parasympathetic nervous system saying, Julia, you're going to drive home. You have 30 minutes on the road with these bees. You need to chill. So that's where our power is. That's where our agency is. But we can't do it if we're tight, clamped down, locked in. And that's where we've got to go and open. Second thing. So the first thing is the breath. Second thing, go outside. Physically put yourself into an open space. And just going outside will do it for you because above you is infinite space. It's so powerful. It's so powerful to go outside. Okay. Final thing about breath and going outside. If you can fold this into your practice, this is an instrument of peace and it's called a sun pause. So just be with the sun with intentionality, breathing outside 8 minutes. That's your practice because that's how long it takes for the sun's light to reach the earth. 8 minutes. And it's fascinating because 8 minutes doesn't sound like much. 8 minutes is a long time. And if you can give yourself 8 minutes, wow, fabulous. Okay. All right. So, friends, tomorrow is Monday. We meet with John at 6 p.m. We're going to be talking about the fourth noble truth. And Lo has posted in the chat the link to Soul Center so you can see our Recovery Dharma practices Monday through Friday. We don't meet again for SatiSeva until, let me get my glasses on, Sunday. God, it's going to be May 3rd. What is happening? It's blink, blink, blink. It's going so fast. May 3rd. Saturday, April 25th, we're having a Reiki sound bath with Soul Center. We do this online and in person. It is a wonderful way to reset the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you've been highly stressed, if you've been distressed, if you've been suppressed, this is a wonderful way to join into community and to just rest. Deep, deep relaxation and restoration. Lo does an amazing job to make this online experience really, really incredible. If you have headphones and you're online, it's even better because we have microphones right up to where I play the bowls and the drums. It's so nice. Lo, what else am I forgetting? Anything? Okay. Order your book, SatiSeva, if you want to. You don't have to, but it supports Soul Center if you do. And I do want to say that so much of what we do here, we offer freely. And so having a space like this, it is an expense. And so we have all of these endeavors, wrote a book, sell a book, all kinds of things that really all go back into Soul Center to support this mission. The people who are involved in Soul Center are 100% volunteer, and which is pretty amazing. And so we appreciate your offerings of Dana. Financial offerings are amazing, but please know that everything in Soul Center is communal. So the tea is donated, the toilet paper is donated, the bird seed is donated because we feed the birds, and so on and so forth. So, however, you are inspired to share, we are so grateful to receive. I think that's it. Let's go ahead and end our practice today with a dedication of merit. Today, we got to hear from a Sangha member say that when they come into practice, it benefits their family. I just want to mic drop that. Isn't that the truth? And what's really fascinating about that is it challenges the sentiment, the very negative sentiment that says that meditation and self reflection is selfish. That is a distortion. When we are practicing with a virtuous intention, where we're really trying to understand our habit energy, we're really trying to understand our mind, we're really trying to cultivate the conditions for kindness and compassion and joy for ourselves and by extension for others. That is the building and the foundational scaffolding to become selfless. And it's fascinating to me that the most unpracticed people tend to be the ones that are really selfish and tend to be the loudest in their resistance to these types of practices. So I mention this to just encourage you and empower you to keep going through any of those voices that might be arising that saying, oh God, you're going to go to another meeting? Really? More? Yes. Yes, because when I heal myself, I by extension become a healing presence. When I understand myself better, I by extension understand situations and other people better, with less judgment, with less aggression, with less harm. These are practices and instruments of peace. And all you have to do is look around to notice how desperate we are for it. So I want to thank you for finely tuning your instruments of peace, for being peacemakers in the world by carrying this presence everywhere you go. You know, you just never know who you're going to touch and how that touch is going to heal and touch others. Thank you for leaving such a powerful impression in this community. And I look forward to seeing you again next time, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. Until then, friends, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Namaste.